The venture industry in that is that most of these deals are structured deals where they, let's say, the company's invested $50 million to get to some like phase 3 clinical trials, and then a big pharmaceutical come along and say, okay, we'll give you $30 million up front and another $500 million when revenues on the first product cumulatively in Europe hit $1 billion. And you kind of go, well, okay, let's do that. And so you sort of lose control of it. Plus, it extends the time. Kevin was asking me about my current firm that I'm with, Sanderling, which is a Bay Area fund, and how old some of the funds are. And I know some of your funds, are getting, have been pretty long around. And it's because you're sitting there waiting for all this stuff, and it's just hard to tell your limited partners, here's an escrow company that we hired, and if that money ever gets paid out when revenues start rolling in from Europe, I'm sure they'll find you and get your money paid. I mean,
well, it's worse than that. It's impossible to do that.
Yeah.
And in fact, 2/3 of life science venture companies have gone out of business because they don't have the returns. It's very simple. And the reason they don't have the returns is, and I will say there's a silver lining in this, and I'll tell you what it is in a minute. But the fact is, what Tim is referring to is the typical situation where you've invested a lot of time and money in a company, and a pharma company turns up and says, hey, guess what, we'll give you your money back in the upfront. And bear in mind, this is just on your successes, on your failures, because you eat that completely. So on your successes, you get your money back. Well, how many people, I think anyone in the room, the least sophisticated person, that after 5 years getting your money back and everything on the back end is not a way to make money, nor is it a way to impress anybody, particularly a limited partner. And therefore, these, what I call predatory taxes, and I know it's predatory because in several situations that later got competitive so that we got some very nice returns out of it. But instead of spending time in the data room doing due diligence, the pharmaceutical partner basically wanted to go over the cap table, with calipers. Why? Well, because they wanted to figure out how much was getting your money back going to be, and then they would make that offer to you. And if there's no competition, and you were a venture firm long invested in it, you're with no alternative, you're likely to take it. But that's not a return you can go raise on a fund.
So all pharmaceutical companies are now colluded to operating this way. They all want us to share the risk with them, but we don't have. We have 10-year funds. What are we supposed to do? Create 15-year funds or 20-year funds? That doesn't make sense. So is the venture capital model going to work right now, Jim? Or not?
Well, it's certainly in our sector, it's loaded with that. I mean, I think, you sit there and say, I could join in with the railing, if you would, about what's going on, and I could argue that some of the structured deals, if you work them right, which requires competition for the deal, aren't all that. If the public market isn't there, you used to take companies public and distribute 20 or 30% of it over 3 or 4 years as you had different milestones, and you were handing out bigger wads of cash. That's essentially a milestone deal if it's done well. And so you just have to structure it so you're not waiting for the $1 billion in sales in Europe that you described. And you basically, and we've had a couple that we've gotten nice paydays from. And actually, I think our returns from the structured deals, I think we've gotten paydays from about 80% of those.